I will now call the regular meeting of the Louisville Air Pollution Control Board to order. Due to COVID-19 outbreak, we're conducting the monthly board meeting today via video teleconference. I am Steve Sullivan, Vice Chair, and am chairing this month's meeting in Chairman Hilton's absence. I will now conduct a roll call of board members that are present on this teleconference. When I call your name, please say here. Dr. Jeffrey Coburn. Dr. Josephine May.
Here.
Candace Shobe White.
Here.
Heather Allen.
Here.
Keith Joy.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Hamilton, are there any introductions today?
Not this morning.
How about public recognitions?
Not this morning.
Okay. The meetings of the public hearing held on March 17, 2021 were distributed electronically for review. Are there any changes to the minutes by board members? Okay. The meetings of the regular meeting held on March 17th were distributed electronically for review. Are there any changes to the minutes by board members? Thank you. Moving on to the public comment section. Mr. Gary, is anyone registered to make a comment?
Yes, Vice Chair. Tina Halbig, Vice President and Clean Water Chair of UN USA Kentucky Division and co-founder and Clean Water Chair for the Floyd's Fork Environmental Association, registered to make comments. I'm looking to see if she is present. Ms. Halbig, if you're present, could you click to raise your hand or press *3 if you're on phone? I do not see her present, though. She did alert us that she was having some trouble connecting this morning.
So
we have one calling user.
Back to her.
Let me see if I can see who this calling user is real quick. Sorry.
Okay.
267. It looks like this calling user 3 may be Ms. Halbig. Andy, can you unmute the call-in user and let's check and see if that's Ms. Halbig?
Hello, this is Tina.
Thank you. Ms. Halbig has registered to make a statement. Ms. Halbig, I already introduced you. And
thank you. Okay, I'm ready to go. Are you ready for me now?
Mr. Sullivan, with your permission?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Tina Halbig, Vice President and former President, 6 years of United Nations Association of the United States of America, Kentucky Division, and co-founder of Floyd's Fork Environmental Association since 1991. We do oppose more chemical pollutants. I wanted to address specifically per and polyfluoroalkyl substances known as PFAS or as forever chemicals. These chemicals, while unregulated, need to be addressed by Air Pollution Control District, if not already. Are you detecting PFAS chemicals? And in the best interest of public health, we ask for reduction of chemical emissions. There are only 2 chemours in the United States created by DuPont, one in North Carolina, the other in Louisville, Kentucky. After DuPont suffered a $670 million lawsuit, DuPont spun off chemours and gave the notorious PFOA chemical, perfluorooctanic acid, to chemours. PFOA was phased out but still remains in the environment and can remain in human bodies for years. Nearly all people in the United States of America have PFOA in their blood, and even newborn babies. It is linked to serious health issues and cancers. Residents in the Rubbertown area, where so many large chemical companies are located, should be offered biomonitoring and blood testing for PFOA, since people can be exposed to it through air, water, soil, contaminated from industrial sources. Also, PFOS, perfluorooctanic sulfonic acid testing should be done. More recently, DuPont paid for a thermal oxidizer to capture 99.99% emissions in North Carolina. Is Air Pollution Control District asking chemical companies to do this in Louisville? What goes up in the air, lands on the ground, can seep into groundwater or run off as surface water and onto the Ohio River, where many withdraw water for drinking for animals and the public. Dust ingestion, inhalation may be a significant contributor to PFAS exposure, particularly for infants and toddlers, among whom it may account for uptake similar to or higher than uptake from food and water ingestion. We ask for air monitoring for PFAS chemicals and recommend thermal oxidizers for any companies emitting PFAS chemicals. Let me show you how Kentucky looks for PFAS. I do have a map on that, which shows quite a bit in Kentucky. I have another map that I can submit that shows PFAS hydrology. Air emissions can contribute to pollutant loadings in drinking water as well as into our streams and rivers, and I'll get those maps on to you, and thank you for allowing this presentation.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Gary, has anyone provided written comments?
No, Mr. Sullivan.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to make a brief comment on this teleconference? Please raise your hand via the teleconference and you will be called on. This is a feature you can find on the participants list or by pressing *3 if joining by phone, and you will be called upon. Mr. Gary, does anyone wish to speak?
I do not see any hands raised. Andy, can you double check me?
I can confirm there. I see no hands raised at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. This completes the public portion of the meeting. There is no unfinished business. A new business, District Regulation 5.15 version 4, chemical accident prevention provisions. At last month's meeting, the district recommended the board adopt proposed amendments to Regulation 5.15 with one addition. Mr. Gary, would you provide that recommendation to the board again?
Thank you, Vice Chair Sullivan and members of the board. This morning, the district brings for your consideration proposed amendments to Regulation 5.15, Chemical Accident Prevention Provisions, version 4. The district is recommending adopting the amendments to Regulation 5.15 as proposed with one following additional amendments. In order to remain consistent with the requirement currently found at 40 CFR Section 68.210B, we recommend deleting the requirement to disclose other relevant chemical hazard information at the public meeting required after an accident in Section 8.2.2 of the proposal.
The district had recommended that the board adopt proposed amendments to Regulation 5.15 version 4 as described today. Is there a motion to adopt the proposed amendments to Regulation 5.15 version 4 as recommended by the district?
I have the first motion to accept the proposal.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? I will now take a roll call. Please unmute your mic and say yes if you wish to adopt the proposed amendments to Regulation 5.15 version 4 as amended by the district. Steve Sullivan, yes. Dr. Jeffrey Coburn.
Yes.
Dr. Josephine May.
Yes.
Candace Shrove White.
Yes.
Heather Allen.
Yes.
Keith Joy.
Yes.
The amendments to Regulation 5.15 are adopted. There have been no committees that have met since the last board meeting, so we'll move on to staff reports. And we're at the director's report, and we'll turn over to Ms. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan, and good morning, board members. Myself oriented here, and I apologize in advance. My dog has decided that he will eat his bone underneath the table, so if you hear large crunching noises, he's a big dog. I apologize. I know that we're all a little shocked. I'm shocked that we're already up to April. I'm even more shocked when I'm looking outside at snow. I think we all had that feeling this morning of how did we get here? But the good news is that today we won't have to worry about ozone formation. But ozone season did begin in March. So you're now going to see data reported in the air quality report. That will last through November. Our ozone season here runs from March to October. So look for that. As you may have already seen this morning, the American Lung Association has released its 2021 State of the Air report, which notes, of course, that we have work to do on ozone, but it also lists Louisville among the cleanest cities in the nation for particle pollution. Dog phone is getting on my nerves this morning. Okay, getting back to this. My apologies. AQCD continues its socially distant field work and continues to primarily work from home. I want to recognize AQCD's administrative professional staff, not just because today is Administrative Professionals Day, but because they've continued to allow our staff to do the Clean Air Act mission that we have by staffing our office throughout the pandemic to manage the mail, which includes applications and volumes of reports, process payments, help us hire new staff, and just make it possible for us to rapidly transition to telework. And these professionals include Kevin Clusta, Andy Purton, Sherry Steiner, Monica Little, Donna Anthony, and Tammy Gartland with the Jefferson County Attorney's Office, who with Rachel Smith, AQCD's administrative manager, do great work every year, but this last year especially so. So please join me in thanking them. I will share details about AQCD's return to the office plan with AQCD staff and the board as soon as I know it. Michelle King, AQCD's Executive Administrator and Director of Program Planning. Byron Gary, AQCD's Regulatory Coordinator. And I have shared a regulatory update with members of Greater Louisville, Inc., the Metro Chamber of Commerce, their Energy and Environment Committee in particular, last week. And Ms. King last week spoke to Dr. Tamara Sluss's Sustainability and the Natural Environment graduate course at U of L School of Urban and Public Affairs on a wide range of information, including an overview of Louisville's air quality, AQCD's work over the years, and environmental justice. As part of our outreach, we continue to attend meetings of the Rubbertown Community Advisory Council, or the RCAC, and the West Jefferson County Community Task Force, which last night hosted a presentation by our colleagues at USEPA on a recent publication that compared data from EPA's regionally applied research effort, Next Generation Emissions Monitoring Project in Rubbertown, the data that was collected from the initial West Louisville air toxic study. They also talked about a new odor app that EPA is developing as part of a regional sustainability and environmental sciences, or RESES, research program that's a spinoff from the original RARE project. This app, which includes a Louisville-specific odor wheel, will be tested by a small group of volunteers here in Louisville, with a national launch planned thereafter. And this app isn't intended to replace the Smell My City app, but it may ultimately provide an additional way to identify odors through the use of some of that next generation emissions measurement equipment developed during the initial RARE project, where pre-placed canisters are located in areas with known odor issues and then essentially crowdsourced to open and collect a sample through odor report. All of EPA's presentations and publications on the RARE, RESES, and other research projects are available on AQCD's website. Later today, Bradley Coombs, AQCD Environmental Coordinator, will be appearing at 2 o'clock on Metro Matters, a weekly radio show on WLLV, that's 1240 AM, to discuss AQCD's Lawn Care for Cleaner Air and Grow More, Mow Less program. For our board members, the show is hosted by Althea Jackson in the mayor's office. Many of you may have gotten to meet her when you applied and joined the board. And finally, as we prepare to celebrate Earth Day tomorrow, I want to thank the board, the district staff, and those who join us today to continue implementing and strengthening the Clean Air Act. You know, your efforts here continue those efforts that were called for in that first Earth Day over 50 years ago to clean the nation's air. I am humbled by the elegance of the Clean Air Act and its ability to adapt new science and challenges as a collaborative effort by U.S. EPA, state and local air pollution control agencies. To that end, EPA has announced a new air toxic strategy I'd like to let the board know about. This is a very exciting time at U.S. EPA with a lot of work and planning being undertaken for how we move into managing air pollution concerns of the future. For EPA, they have recognized that working within silos is a problem and that they are focused on working collaboratively both within and outside of U.S. EPA through enhanced coordination, collaboration, and communication, and establishing a very systematic approach within the Clean Air Act framework for identifying and addressing air toxic issues. As part of this, they are working to have an earlier identification of potential new and emerging issues. They believe that having an EPA team where they will evaluate and screen new air toxics will help promote this work. And they are committed to early communication of these issues. From that, there will be additional outreach and implementation. And that's a critical part as we all work together in this collaborative way. The EPA, state, and local programs like APCD to manage air pollution concerns. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Air pollution and water pollution don't abide by jurisdictional boundaries. So issues of national concern, like the new and emerging contaminant that Ms. Halbig mentioned, need a national strategy. The board will provide an update to the board on PFAS and PFOAs, where they come from, where they are in our environment, and the state of the regulatory control of those contaminants at an upcoming board meeting. At this point, I can provide that update at the May board meeting or possibly the June board meeting, depending on the chair's preference. Greenhouse gases are another good example of a place where a national strategy is critically important. Yesterday, President Joe Biden pledged to cut greenhouse gas emissions at least in half by 2030. That is a pledge made under the voluntary 2030 pledge is nationally known as part of the nationally determined contribution and a part of the Paris Climate Pact that tries to bind global efforts into seeing these reductions take effect. This target would double the nation's previous commitment, and it also makes it more likely that the U.S. can meet its mission of net zero emissions by 2050. That's a very big national pledge, and even locally, you may have seen an article Monday in the Courier Journal about Comores' plans to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 across their enterprise. This new target replaces their prior goal of reducing greenhouse gas intensity by 60% by 2030. And this is good news. They are committed to the two projects here in Louisville to locally reduce their emissions of HFC 23 and HCFC 2022 by 2022 and 2024 respectively. We understand the company is planning to submit an application to APCD by midsummer for their HFC 23 control project. So we'll let the board know when we've received that application. I know I mentioned last month that APCD expects new greenhouse gas regulations from EPA in the near future. There's a great article on Gina McCarthy, who's the architect of the greenhouse gas regulations under the Obama administration and the architect of the greenhouse gas regulations we anticipate, as well as potentially federal legislation in this morning's New York Times. Many of you will remember Ms. McCarthy as EPA's administrator in the Obama administration. And at that time, the program that they developed was really a source-based regulatory program under the Clean Air Act's New Source Performance Standard Provision, or NSPS. We expect that we'll learn more about the administration's greenhouse gas regulatory plan in the next week and over the next coming weeks. We're not sure, candidly, whether they will go back to that source-based strategy or if they will develop something new. Over the last couple of years, that initial NSPS standard was challenged. So this is just a very exciting time for those of us who work in air pollution control. And we expect to see some, probably something different come out of the administration here shortly. We will keep the board up to date as we learn more about those national plans, both about new and emerging contaminants and also on greenhouse gas emissions. And if there are no questions from me, I'll turn this over to APCD's program planning team to present an update on ozone season programs and outreach. Mr. Sullivan?
Any questions from board members for Ms. Hamilton?
It's Dr. May again. I know we talked about it at the last board meeting in terms of the APCD's role with the COMORs, but the speaker in the beginning, and the public speaker, she had made a comment about the North Carolina plant already implementing containment, of those PFAS. So, do you know if that is what the barrier is? Is it just a cost for the company to obtain that equipment, or do we know what it is that's causing the delay at this point?
So let's sit back just a little bit, Dr. May, and I apologize. I want to be sure I fully cover your questions. I'm going to try to break this down. The plant in North Carolina emits PFAS and PFOA. They emit a different chemical than that which is emitted here in Louisville. So the concern there is to manage those contaminants. Here in Louisville, the place where we see PFAS and PFOA is as a drinking water issue. These chemicals are used in a lot of consumer products. Teflon, for example, includes PFAS, PFOA. The coating on some oil, some pizza boxes includes PFAS and PFOA. Prevents your pizza from soaking through the cardboard box. It's used in fighting foam. So our understanding of our companies here in Louisville is that they do not emit those PFAS, PFOAs. They emit HFC-23, a refrigerant, and HCFC-22, also a refrigerant. The primary reason that they're regulated under the Clean Air Act at this point is that those two chemicals, which are replacement for other types of refrigerants, are less risky or safer as a refrigerant to be used in commercial enterprise. They also impact the stratospheric ozone layer. So their primary hazard is that they go up and eat a hole in the ozone layer. As a result, they are regulated under Title VI of the Clean Air Act as international contributors to stratospheric ozone degradation. That program is managed at the US EPA administrator level. They are also potent greenhouse gases. That is an issue that, while emitted here in Louisville from a greenhouse gas standpoint, affects everyone across the nation similarly, because it's a global issue with greenhouse gases. The company here is putting together a project that will capture HCFC 23, and then it will be sent for off-site destruction. So they're going to capture it and send it off. Our understanding from the article on Monday that they intend to capture the HCFC 22 and reuse that in their projects here locally. So there are two different control issues, one in North Carolina specifically for PFAS and PFOAs, a separate issue by Chemours here to control their emissions of HFC 23 and HCFC 22 from a greenhouse gas standpoint. I'm not sure I've answered your question fully yet, but I'll try it this way. What we do understand about trying to manage greenhouse gases and what we may see in a new program from EPA anticipates that doing so will be a multi-year, perhaps decades-long program for us. So the company has committed to control HFC 23 by 2022. They are working with a company to reconfigure equipment at their plant to be able to capture those emissions and send them off, and then also reconfigure equipment to capture HFC 22 by 2024. Did that help? You're on mute. So sorry.
Yes, that was helpful because I was getting things blurred a little bit. But and so the technology to capture those gases is present, and so that is not the barrier. And there is a plan in a given space of time. What I didn't know is though there is a plan, is there a barrier to move it faster, and what would that barrier be? Is it getting the components to capture it? Is it the funding to be able to invest in that, to be able to get that? Is that something that on a, if it's a funding thing, is that something that the, local or federal government can help to subsidize in some manner, in the form of straight subsidization or tax rebate or a loan payment, for so that way they can implement it faster since the technology is there?
Dr. May, that's a really good point. At this point, what we understand is that they are in the design and implementation phase for HFC 23, and that does take some time. You have to, and one thing about the Chemours facility to keep in mind, please, they are part of the former B.F. Goodrich complex, and that complex over time has been split up into multiple companies. When you're working in a physically constrained site, it can be challenging to reconfigure things so that everything works properly and doesn't create new hazards or new issues. The time frame on this seems to be appropriate for them to come in by by the end of 2022. And candidly, given the goals of the Title VI stratospheric ozone program, by which some of these chemicals were intended to be banned and taken out of the marketplace by 2030, and then later by 2050, there are provisions that allow companies like Chemours to continue making this because of the needs of commerce. That's what EPA does in managing the program, that it fits within that time frame. So it fits within the time frame for greenhouse gas management. This isn't a hazardous air pollutant. It's not a toxic air contaminant. So from our standpoint, this time frame seems appropriate. We hope that they'll beat that time frame. We're sure they're going to meet it this time, and look forward to having them come in with that application, and we'll let the board know when we're working on it. We will provide for the board an update on PFAS and PFOAs at next month's board meeting and try to get you some information in advance just so that you'll understand kind of where that national new and emerging contaminant issue is. And I apologize for my dog.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the information in the background and know that it's not strictly within the APCD's purview. But I was just thinking about it in the sense of, since the technology is there, it's kind of like, the incentive of getting the bridge built faster or something and having it available, and they get the construction companies get incentives for it. So that's what I was kind of aiming towards.
Any other questions for Ms. Hamilton from the board? Thank you for that report. Let's move on to staff reports. Is that correct, Ms. Hamilton?
We still have the presentation from the program planning team as part of the director's report, Mr. Sullivan.
Okay. Have at it.
Yeah, so if the board's ready, we'll move on there.
Let's
Do some screen sharing magic here. That I think it worked well. All right. So good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle King. I'm Director of Program Planning and part of the program planning team. I'm really excited for the board to hear about some of the great outreach and engagement work that's being undertaken by district staff. Today, you'll be hearing from 3 members of the program planning team: Byron Gary, Regulatory Coordinator, also your Board Secretary Treasurer, who you know well, Dee Lynch, our Community Outreach Coordinator that heads up the CARE program, and Bradley Coombs, Environmental Coordinator that leads our Lawn Care for Cleaner Air and Grow More Mow Less programs. They're going to provide some overviews of some returning and some new programs as we head into the area's ozone season. So first, I'm going to provide a little context for the work. Like, why do we focus outreach and engagement programs on the ozone season? So as you all know, EPA has set national ambient air quality standards, or NAAQS, as we constantly refer to them, for a set of pollutants known as criteria pollutants. Louisville is in attainment of all of these standards except ozone. Like many urban areas, ozone has been a long-term challenge for Louisville. While we've seen steady reductions over the years, we have struggled to meet increasingly stringent health-based standards. Under the Clean Air Act, EPA is required to revisit these standards on a regular basis and review the health research and the best state of science at the time. And occasionally, often, they recommend that those standards get more stringent and more protective of health. And that has certainly been the case over the years for the ozone standard. So while we've made a good general steady downward trend, we are still not meeting that national standard, and that's where a lot of the focus for our work is. So, and as you can see here, there is a lot of variation amongst the years in our ozone design value. And what that really reflects is the importance of the weather and the levels of ozone we monitor. So just as a reminder, ozone is not emitted directly. Rather, it forms in the atmosphere in the presence of sunlight, and it forms faster at higher temperatures. So this is why ozone is discussed in terms of an ozone season. Here in Louisville, as we heard earlier, the ozone season is March through October, which is why you're now starting to see ozone included in your monthly air quality air monitoring board reports. Ozone isn't emitted directly from those sources. It is a chemical that is created in the atmosphere from the reaction between NOx, or oxides of nitrogen, and VOCs, volatile organic compounds. Again, in the presence of sunlight, we get ozone. Director Hamilton spoke some about ozone earlier in terms of stratospheric ozone and chemicals that deplete the ozone layer. What we're talking about here and what we're monitoring is tropospheric ozone, ground level ozone. So while we want that strong ozone layer up high in the stratosphere, we don't want ozone down where we are actually breathing. So that's the frequently cited reminder on ozone is it's good up high, bad nearby. So we don't want that in our the air that we're breathing because it does have some health effects. And in particular, it's an irritant to the lung and it inflames the airways, and that can aggravate lung disease, increase frequency of asthma attacks. And in general, I've heard it's very lay way of putting it, but I've heard it described as something like a sunburn in your lungs. So that has been a long time struggle for us here in Louisville. So while we do have a focus on ozone in our programs, and especially this time of year, we also have goals to continue reducing other criteria pollutants, such as fine particulates, as well as air toxics. So to gather ideas and to build support for emission reduction strategies, as many of you all will recall, although I know we have some newer board members. So just to give a highlight, in 2019 and 2020, we convened the multi-pollutant stakeholder group. That included representatives from more than 60 wide-ranging organizations, from industry to health advocacy groups, from other metro departments and governmental partners to community and neighborhood representatives. So from that group, we had more than 90 recommendations, and these were some of the goals that we set out. And in large part, we really wanted to hear ideas on programs that we could implement to reduce emissions across all of these pollutants, particularly those strategies that hit on multiple pollutants. But we also wanted to hear from stakeholders with ideas on how to raise awareness and build support for emission reduction strategies at the district. So the programs that you'll hear about today and the efforts that you've been discussing in board meetings over the past few months are all supported by, or in some cases, are actually direct results of these recommendations. So Byron will be starting off and he'll be sharing a new program that's developed pursuant to Point and Area Source Committee recommendations for us to encourage facilities to have air quality alert day plans. So those days when we're predicting that we may have an exceedance of ozone, typically is the pollutant that we're looking at. We would like to see voluntary measures taken at facilities to reduce their emissions. And then also to further encourage that, it was recommended that we have a recognition program. So you're going to hear a lot more about that from Byron today, and that is a new program. But we've also had recommendations to reduce unnecessary engine idling. Hopefully you've already heard some of CARE's idle-free messaging, and Dee is going to provide a great look at last year's highlights of that CARE program and some plans going forward. Over the past few months, the board has been receiving new monthly air toxics monitoring reports from the district's new auto GC at the Algonquin Parkway, and that is also responsive to the Health Committee's recommendation that we investigate opportunities to enhance the official monitoring network. We're also currently looking into funding opportunities to bring some other types of air monitoring projects into our programs offerings as well. So I hope that over the summer that we may be able to bring additional news on that front to the board as well. And both Dee and Bradley work with, Bradley, who works with the Grow More Mow Less program, maintains strong social media presence with their programs, and Dee has been instrumental in keeping APCD on the Twitter social media platform. So I hope you'll find our programs on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and give us a follow. The use of social media platforms and internet for sharing our messaging was a specific recommendation of the Outreach and Education Committee. And you'll be seeing more messaging from us and from our partners during Air Quality Awareness Week, which is May 3rd through 7th. So if you're out there on those social media platforms, please give us a follow. And we also appreciate the shares and cross postings too. We're fortunate to have some really great partners, both within Louisville Metro government, other community groups, and interested individual stakeholders that really help increase our reach across these platforms by sharing and cross posting the information that we put out there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Byron, and he's going to start taking us through the programs that we're excited to bring to you today. Byron?
Thanks, Michelle. So the first program, the one I'm going to talk about, is our new Air Quality Action Partners, or AQAPs, as we're terming it, plan. This springs out of a couple of the MPSG recommendations, as Michelle describes. Here is recommendation 4 from the Point Committee in full. It's sort of a 3-part recommendation in various ways for the district to encourage action by point sources on air quality alert days in particular, including through making sure that everybody is actually signed up for those air quality alerts at our sources, recommending that the sources themselves have an air quality alert day plan, and encouraging the district to recognize companies that do have air quality alert day plans. It references recommendation 2, which is up there in full now. This is the recommendation that the district start a program to recognize companies for voluntary efforts. AQAPs is meant to sort of fulfill both recommendation 2 and recommendation 4. And recommendation 3 is that the district should encourage participation in other voluntary programs that are already out there, such as that from KPPC, the EPAD program from our own Advanced Planning and Sustainability departments, as well as the KYXL program. Next slide. So we took this and developed the Air Quality Action Partners Plan. We sent out a letter to the environmental contacts and responsible officials at all of our sources here in Louisville. The letters were sent out March 31st to 703 different contacts at 400 different plants, and requested responses by April 30th. The reason there is the monitoring season for ozone has begun at the beginning of March, but reporting for ozone season purposes from Title V sources begins officially on May 1st. So the May 1st through September period is when they are required to report their ozone season emissions. It's also when we see most of our ozone exceedances. So we set that as a deadline. We've already received 6 responses from plants. The letter is there on the left, but on the right is a link to the checklist that is linked in the letter as well. This is a sort of list of suggested actions for companies to commit to. It includes a variety of different things. I think on the next slide, I can get into a little bit more of the details on sort of what we suggested. So for the basic level, there are different levels that we ask companies to consider committing. For all AQAPs, there is a requirement to commit to signing up for air quality alerts at the plant level, and then making sure that those are distributed throughout facilities to all employees. This can happen in a number of different ways, but making sure that everybody is aware when we are having an air quality alert day is the commitment required of everybody to be signed up for this program. And then taking at least 2 voluntary commitments to reduce air pollution, in particular on those AQA days. The first sort of level up from that is the silver level, where companies take the same commitment to be an AQAP, but then commit to at least 1 reduction strategy from each of the tier 2 categories. Tier 2, we sort of broke up into a list of different categories. There's stationary source equipment operations and emissions. This is things like avoiding startups and shutdowns or maintenance on air pollution emitting equipment on AQA days, or signing up to commit to only using more green solvents and things like that. Category in tier 2 is vehicle and fleet emissions. This is things like having an idle reduction program or committing to a policy where you commit to future purchases of your fleet being LEVs, low emission vehicles. And then the third category is things like facility and building related emissions. This is things like avoiding maintenance on the building itself, or mowing, or non-road construction and things like that on AQA days. And also having a just general green cleaning equipment policy or something like that. So there are a variety of suggested actions. Next slide gets into tier 3, which has a gold level of recognition and platinum level. And tier 3 is where we really think the rubber hits the road. The companies actually commit to verifiable, quantifiable reductions in emissions. The gold level is for those who commit to the same things as the silver level, but actually pledge to quantify the reduction seen from those commitments in some way, shape, or form. We're asking for those reports to be submitted by the beginning of the second year of this program that we're anticipating beginning in April of next year. And the platinum level is for those who do all of the above plus commit to some actual additional level of quantifiable emissions reductions. This can be things like a commitment to a 5% turnover in their fleets towards LEV vehicles, or a 5% reduction across their plant in emissions on ozone alert days, or for, because this is a multi-pollutant plant, of PM across the year. Or if they just want to skip straight to the platinum level, we'll recognize anybody at the platinum level if they commit to a 10% reduction in emissions under one of the tier 3 commitments. This can be for ozone season precursors, or for across the year for fine particulate matter emissions. So that's where we are right now. I do want to let the board know, since we're asking for commitments by the end of this month, we do part of the benefit of this for the plants is that we do plan to recognize those at the gold and platinum level before the board at our May board meeting. And everybody who signs up to be an AQAP will be recognized publicly, likely on the webpage of the district. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Is that the end?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Dee, you want to take it up next?
That's fine. Good morning. I'm Dee Lynch, Care Coordinator. Kentuckiana Air Education is a federally funded by CMAQ funds regional program for air quality. Advance the slide, please, Michelle. My job is to speak to the public in the region. I work with the 5 counties, Clark and Floyd over in Indiana, as well as Bullitt, Oldham, and Jefferson County on the Kentucky side, to talk to the public about their impact and their individual choices that they have on local air quality. Of course, 2020 was a uniquely challenging year for outreach, as well as many other things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we met those challenges and also look into the future for what we plan to do this year. First decision to make was a pivot. With the pandemic, we had shutdowns at schools. We had a lot of people not idling at schools anymore, which was a good thing, but where were they idling? So our messaging switched from idling at car rider lines to curbside pickup, which is where everybody went with restaurant takeout, with picking up your groceries. So that change in messaging absolutely fit the situation and made us, relevant, in that world. This is just a sample of our digital marketing campaign. Next slide, please. You can see how the consistency, went across several different venues. At the top is that digital and mobile campaign as well. On the right is a Waze campaign, which is something I've been very excited about. Waze is a navigation and traffic app. Many people use it to navigate the city, try to get around all the congestion. The nice thing about a crowdsourced navigation app is it senses when you slow down and when you stop. So we were able to put a message on your phone when your car was idling. And that message pops up. As you can see on the phone, there's a place where it says save for later. So it's a little safer than looking at a website while you're driving or waiting in traffic. People could save that for later. And a lot of people did that. They clicked save for later, and then they went to our website after they got home. And then at the bottom is our bus ads. TARC's a great partner. TARC goes throughout the community and throughout the region. And not only do the ads look good, we get a lot of bonus advertising through those, because if no one has purchased the advertising rights after we have, then the ads stay on the buses and they still look good for several months following what we've actively paid for in the campaign. Next, please. Okay. Just as our radio ads will pair really, really well with traffic, because people are thinking, okay, traffic, and they hear a message about idling, that fits very well. Pairing a weather app with our digital campaign was the most successful part of our digital campaign. And it makes a lot of sense. You know, what did we all do last year for fun? A caregiver might say, okay, I'm going to take my kids out for a walk in the parks because that's relatively safe. So what do I do first? I'm going to check the weather. Do we need a jacket? Is it going to rain on us? You know, so checking the weather and also getting an ad from CARE made a lot of sense. And you can see we got a lot of impressions through that. And we got a lot of click-throughs to our website for information on how you can help. And, you know, again, this was our most successful pairing on the digital campaign. Next. And here's our website. As you can see, we still have this consistent look, the same colors, the same feel, because that's a trust thing. Everybody, when they click through to something, they want to know that they're on a trusted site, and that consistent look is part of that. You can see that people actually spent quite a long time on our website. You know, this was our public billboard, so to speak, digital. People also spent quite a long time on our landing page about how they can help. There's a lot of good information on there on things they can do to reduce ozone, to reduce their impact on our local air quality. And we got over 30,000 visits just to that one page. Next, please. Obviously, there wasn't a lot of face-to-face last year for good reason. I was able to Zoom into some classrooms and speak to some environmental clubs, summits and conferences that were going on. I was able to send some videos where, you know, people were able to, you know, see those broadcast. I did distribute some idle-free signs, including to COVID-19 testing sites. But for the most part, there wasn't a lot of tabling anywhere. We also had to cancel a festival or a music concert type venue out in Oldham County, which we usually do. That money was put back into the digital campaign. I did want to share this photo. I've gotten back into the schools in a way. This is Holy Cross High School. I was out there a few weeks ago, met in the classroom, but went almost immediately out to the outdoor classroom, also known as the Holy Cross parking lot, where I worked with students. They learned how to check the tire pressure on their own cars and vehicles, and learned how that helps the air and also helps keep their tires from wearing out more quickly. So that was a really feel-good visit to be back out talking to students, especially since I'm going to indulge me for a minute while I share a real feel-good story. Last spring, February-ish, I was working with a student, a senior at Holy Cross. He wanted to do a senior project on idle-free because students, teenagers will get to the school and they'll sit in their cars in the parking lot, listening to music, talking with their friends, instead of going into the gym and sitting on the bleachers where they are supervised by staff. Go figure. So he wanted to speak to the underclassmen about why they should be idle free and do that as a senior project. And we had worked through the month of February. He visited one of our air monitoring stations at Cannons Lane. He had all his materials, and then the shutdown happened. So didn't happen, except this week. I was able to connect with a student. His name is Thomas. He's at Bellarmine this year. And he saw that I was at Holy Cross through the social media, and he's got connected with the teacher, and he will be going back to Holy Cross to speak to the class that I spoke to on Friday. So that's just my little feel-good story for the day. We did get some completion on his idle-free senior project, and I'm looking forward to photos from that. Thank you. Let's move on. This year's campaign. We have not done any research, especially not focus groups, since 2017. As our director has said, things have changed recently, but things have really changed since 2017. So I felt it was important that we do some research to see where our constituency is at. Are they thinking that they would make an air quality change for economic reasons? Are they thinking they would make it for health reasons? And I think that's just important to hone our message and be really efficient with the dollars that we have. Next slide, please. We have spent an entire year focused on respiratory health. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. So obviously, our work is more important than ever. I think we will be looking at, making sure that people get air quality forecasts, into the future. And as things start to open up, I think there's going to be an even bigger audience for our outreach message. Next, please. Also, we've added an entire group to the unhealthy for sensitive groups. I know personally, I know several people who are recovered from COVID, but they are still battling the disease. So reaching people who are suddenly in that category is going to be both challenging and I think rewarding as we continue to get them the information that they need to make good decisions about their health. Next, please. And as always, as Michelle already put in a plug, follow us on all our different social media channels. If you go to Instagram today, you'll see some beautiful pictures of snow on the trees, along with the daily air quality forecast. And we will be making a really big push right after Derby for Air Quality Awareness Week. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the chance to share with you some of the things we've done with CARE this year.
Okay, I guess it's my turn now. Can everybody hear me okay? Great.
Yeah.
So I'm Bradley Coombs. I am an environmental coordinator here at APCD, and I administer the Lawn Care for Cleaner Air and Grow More, Mow Less programs. So let's jump on in. So you all are probably aware, but maybe some folks aren't. What do lawns have to do with clean air anyway? Well, your typical your typical 4-cycle gas mower emits a lot of pollution, probably a lot more than most people realize. In the picture here, you can see the amount of pollution emitted per hour of your typical gas-powered mower. Those emissions include CO, CO2, NO, SO2, and VOCs. You see your other options there as far as electrics and human-powered mowers. It's just clear that those options they run a lot cleaner and therefore a lot better for your and everybody else's health. Skip ahead. So our Lawn Care for Cleaner Air program, the way this works is we offer rebates on electric and reel. When I say reel, I don't mean R-E-A-L, I mean reel, like the old school kind of mower that you push with no power besides your own. We offer rebates on electric and reel equipment for Louisville Metro residents and businesses. We encourage people to, as a part of the program, to recycle their old gas-powered equipment. We also encourage people to recycle their old electric equipment if they've had electric equipment in the past. So recycle all of that. The program is actually entering its 18th year, so it's been around for kind of a long time, and it's been operating uninterrupted. The program runs year round. Even through COVID, the program never ceased to operate. We were up and running the whole time. Since 2003, the program has distributed over 11,000 rebates, and that equates to keeping over 4 million pounds of pollution out of the air. The program is funded by air pollution penalties. You all being the board, you probably understand how the air pollution penalty process works. So that's where the funding comes from. It's not directly funded by taxpayer dollars. And a really good update, our rebates at this point this year are up 17% from this state last year. Last year, was with COVID, we had a dip in our rebates last year for obvious reasons, but it looks like things are kind of getting back up to a little bit of a normal rate. As a part of the program, we also have what's called the professional level. So Lawn Care for Cleaner Air Professional. It used to be called the commercial program up until 2013. What that program did until 2013 was offer rebates on what was considered cleaner gas-powered mowers. So we incentivized people switching from your old 2-stroke mowers to 4-stroke mowers. But when those mowers were phased out of being manufactured because of tightened EPA regulations, we shifted that program to no longer give those types of rebates, and we changed it to giving rebates on more powerful electric equipment. So we upped the rebate amounts for more powerful electric equipment, kind of gearing the equipment toward lawn care professionals and also homeowners that had larger yards to take care of. So that program gives out larger rebates, and we're through a partnership with a regional dealer called Bryan Equipment. We are able to offer even larger rebates on the Steel brand commercial equipment. They gave us a few years back funds to match rebate amounts on specific pieces of their equipment. So that's been, especially the last couple of years with one client in particular, that's been a really successful program. You can skip ahead, and this is what I was just referring to. So there is a lawn care group called the Clausing Group who operate here. They also operate in Lexington, but they also operate here in Louisville as well. We've been partnering with them through a local retailer called the Mower Shop in essentially replacing their whole lineup of equipment with the electric steel commercial grade equipment. They're on a trajectory to replace all of their trimmers and blowers and push mowers and everything with the equipment. So our steel program has allowed them to put to make a big dent in that project. And you can see that just in the last several years, the number of steel rebates that we did prior to 2019 were just a couple a year. But just in the last couple of years, that number really jumped up, and that will be the same again this year as well, because this this Clausen group has already made several steel purchases through the program this year. Forward. So as Dee was saying earlier, our outreach efforts, of course, are still being sort of compromised because of COVID-19. Last year was essentially a washout as far as public events and that kind of thing. But we are still advertising with pretty much our 3 traditional ad partners. In the last few years, we have shifted most of our advertising towards digital and gotten away from print. We found that to be more effective, but in strategizing with our partners, we have found that especially during the COVID-19 outbreak, that digital has become even more effective. So we've pushed even more into that realm, more so than we ever have. Something else that's new this year is for the last few years, we have, in an attempt to push the Lawn Care for Cleaner Air professional program and raise those rebate totals, we have marketed towards areas of town with larger lot sizes, trying to appeal to homeowners that had bigger lots to take care of. And that campaign was very successful. Our Lawn Care Cleaner Air professional rebates are now, they take up, I think somewhere between 25 and 30% of our total rebates, which is a huge number compared to what it was just a few years ago. And we feel like we can kind of sustain that level right now just by doing our regular outreach. But what we really want to make sure we're doing is not missing any parts of town. So in an effort to do that this year, we are specifically reaching out to areas of town that would be defined by KIPTA as environmental justice areas. For a couple of reasons we're doing that. We want to make sure that folks living in these areas aren't missing out on the messaging, are making sure that everyone has access to, being able to get a rebate on something that can help to clean up the air, like in your direct vicinity. Because when you're using a mower, you are exposing yourself to the emissions coming out of it. So we want to make sure that everybody, we're just hitting, we're getting the message out to everyone in town, especially folks that need it the most. Go ahead. Also, another brand new thing that we're doing this year is we are developing a Lawn Care for Cleaner Air Community Equipment Grant Program. This is a competitive grant for nonprofit organizations that are tasked with maintaining their own property that would like to switch to electric equipment, but maybe can't afford to do that. The grant will consist of a mower, a string trimmer, a leaf blower, and an extra battery, essentially everything you would need to kind of maintain your own, decent sized property. Again, something that we are including as part of the criteria is organizations located within environmental justice areas will be given special consideration when we are determining who to award the grant to. All nonprofits within Jefferson County are welcome to apply. It's just that we feel like special consideration should be made to agencies located within EJ areas. Next. So quickly, just talking about the sister program to Lawn Care for Cleaner Air, which is Grow More, Mow Less. It's not a rebate program like lawn care is. It's essentially an outreach program that seeks to reduce the amount of turf grass that people have in their yards. So it cuts down on the amount of mowing that needs to be done in the first place. We encourage people to replace turf grass with more sustainable, air-friendly landscaping, and that can look like anything from trees to raised bed gardens to alternative ground covers, bushes, hedges, wildflowers. I mean, I could go on and on and on about all the different types of plant material that instead of grass. There's a lot of co-benefits when you're talking about using these types of plant materials instead of turf grass, like stormwater management, reduction of urban heat island effect, increased habitat for wildlife, and so on. Next. So these are just a few pictures of the kind of things I'm talking about and how they can be applied in different settings. So just with at your home, if you've got a small yard that slopes down toward the street, we know that those types of yards can be a pain to mow. So, you know, putting in plant material there on that slope is a really great way to not only keep that soil from eroding, but just to avoid, you know, mowing on that kind of pain area. Roadside plantings are really great, that they keep from, you know, they keep mowing crews from having to go out and mow those areas so often. A lot of times with your big, like, corporate campuses, they'll have very large properties and lots of grass that people don't use. It's great when we see those types of properties convert those big just grass lawns into small, like kind of either park style places or put in like you know, like a native grass type prairie area or like a patch of wildflowers, essentially anything except for a big open grass lawn that needs to be mowed every week, you know, for several months out of the year. So lots of different examples of way that these strategies can be implemented in lots of different places. Next. And that's it for me. These are just resources for probably places you guys already know how to get to. APCD, lawn care, Grow More, Mow Less Facebook page, all that good stuff. So thank you very much.
Well,
All right, thank you. Chairman, Vice Chair Sullivan.
Well, thank you, Michelle and Byron and Dee and Bradley for those presentations. Are there any questions from board members? I have two quick ones. I was curious, just generally speaking, what do the 6 letters from the industries on the voluntary programs have to say? Are they signing up for different levels, or are they more related to questions?
Yeah, so far we've already had the 6 that I referred to were actually commitments already signed up for. So those 6 range from registered sources, which is our lowest level, all the way up to a Title V company, and they range all the way from that base level AQAP sign up all the way up to a couple silver level and a gold level commitments already. We haven't had any platinum level commitments yet, but in addition to those 6, I've had a number of other inquiries about the program. So still anticipating more before that April 30th deadline, hopefully.
All right, great. And then I probably should know the answer to this, but why is Shelby County not included in the network of counties with Oldham and Bullitt?
You mean the non-attainment area?
Yeah, there was I think it was Dee was mentioning her outreach, and it was Shelby County was not part of the 5 outside Jefferson County.
I'll leave that to her.
Hi, a lot of that has to do with the eligibility for CMAQ funding, which funds my grant program, is the grant which funds my program. And Shelby County is not included in that as, you know, a non-attainment area for Ozone. But that doesn't mean that I've never gone out to Shelby County. I've been to out there because obviously people travel in and out of the region. And so, I've kind of gone to places that are either in Shelby County or, hopefully I'm speaking to commuters from Shelby County when they're at, say, an event in downtown Louisville. So hopefully that answers your question. And, nothing against Shelby County. They're practically, they're our neighbors. So.
Just as wider.
Wanted to add to that, because of Dee's grant funding, the advertising campaigns that she's able to do for the CARE program certainly do go beyond just those eligible counties through radio and sometimes television advertising as well.
Thank you. Other questions?
I just have a comment. I didn't know, with regard to the CARE program, that's always been good in terms of getting the word out. And I think the curbside pickups is a, primary spot. I was wondering if there was any type of things where it's like a short-term pop-up, like just by like yard signs or things like that can be done for. It's like, with the vaccination sites, you've got lots of cars, that end up idling. Had gone to some fish fries during Lent, and, it's like there's tons of, cars idling then, and so those would be short-term but targeted areas. And I was wondering if that's something that might be an idea to implement.
Well, that's a great idea. That's, part of the reason why we got idle-free signage put up at the testing sites over the summer, because people were driving through and not everybody was turning off your car. And that is, not good for the people doing the testing or for the people sitting in the cars. I was really happy to know I went through Broadbent to get my vaccination. And as we wait that 15 minutes for, make sure that there's no reaction to the vaccination, the signs do say park, and turn off your vehicle. So I think that message is there, but, I like your idea about the fish fries. I've used, I've had Girl Scout groups before, at places telling people to turn off. And when they do, they get cookies and water. So, any kind of incentive we can think of, I'd love to see a fish fry line where you got free fries or something if you turned off when you were not idling. So good idea. I'm following that one away. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, again, thank you for those reports. The other reports on air quality enforcement status and the like were distributed electronically. Are there any questions from board members on any of those reports? And hearing none, I will now.
Excuse me. I have a comment on the air toxics report.
Okay.
In that report for these various air toxic compounds, the monthly averages are listed there. Yeah, and also the max 24-hour averages. And then for reference, the benchmark concentrations for these compounds, both for cancer, based on cancer and non-cancer effects. But the time periods here are different, because for the benchmark concentrations, those benchmarks are based on annual averages. So we don't have a column for that. The 24-hour max and the monthly averages, those tend to be higher. So it really would be useful to have a column there for annual average. Now, maybe we don't have a year's worth of data yet on all of these compounds, but in the meantime, what could be included is just a longer time period, what's ever available. For example, perhaps 6 months of data are available, so include a 6 months average, or if it's only, 4 months or 5 months that's available, just include that column until a year's worth of data is available, and then from then on, the column would be like a rolling 12-month average. That's why we wouldn't be comparing two different quantities. It's more of apples to apples rather than apples to oranges. So that's my comment and suggestion on that report. And maybe if anybody from APCD has a response, I'd be interested to hear it. Maybe you probably have some plans in regards to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Coburn. This is Rachel, and we do appreciate that comment. That is what we're hoping to elicit right now as we introduce this new information. We can go ahead and look at how we could present the average to date. There are caveats and notations with respect to the data that we are presenting today, and try to figure out the best way to visually display that so that we keep people up to date with the information and they're able to assess it accurately. So we'll take a look at that. You may see another draft come out with some additional comments to look at that average period. We don't have a year's worth of data yet. We don't yet have 6 months worth of data that we're going to include in this report, but we will come back to the board with some thoughts on that at the next meeting. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? If not, I will now adjourn this regular. Sorry.
I apologize, and again,
No
I
problem.
apologize for the talk. I took away the cow stuff he was chewing under the table. My apologies. We will be holding a public hearing tomorrow night at 6 p.m. on Heaven Hill. We have a construction permit that we're issuing and also an operating permit. Instructions for joining that meeting are available on our proposed actions page. And we hope to see folks there tomorrow night for that public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? So now I will adjourn this regular meeting of the board and thank you for your participation. The next meeting will be Wednesday, May 19th at 10 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
You're welcome. Did the reset actually work for you, Rachel? Information, or is it still all screwed up?
I'll be in touch, Andy. Thank you. See ya.